For the AZ-900 exam, Microsoft wants to make sure you understand the resources that are required for creating a virtual machine. If you haven't seen it, I've created a virtual machine in Azure in a previous video. Here are the required virtual machine resources. An Azure subscription. You've got to have an Azure subscription, and inside that, a resource group to hold all the virtual machines related to these resources. A virtual machine image, which is an operating system template. Now you can choose from many different types, such as Linux or Windows, and different versions of Linux and Windows as well. And a managed disk for the operating system. You've got to put that data someplace, and it's going to have to be on storage in Azure. The next thing is going to be a virtual network as well as a network interface card. So that way you can have network connectivity between different resources as well as out to the internet. And optionally, you can have a public IP address and an auto-created network security group. So you can determine how you want people to access this virtual machine if you want them to be able to access it from the public. Now you can lock down which public IP addresses can access it using the network security group, or you can just leave it wide open to the world, which of course is not the best security plan. I'm in the Azure portal under Azure Services, and you can see the resources. These are the resources that were created when I created my virtual machine. I'm going to click on See All so you can see all the different resources. Here you can see my storage, my virtual machine, my resource group, and my IP address. And this is going to be the public IP address. Let's go back home and take a look at the resource group that I created for that virtual machine. Here it is under RG1 for resource group 1. And here's how we can manage a lot of the resource group resources by clicking on some of these different rules. For example, we can go ahead and click on available memory bytes. And you can see a cost that comes with the memory that was chosen. In this case, the estimated cost is just going to be 10 cents. And you can click on each one of these different resources that comes with the virtual machine to get more information, and in some cases you can customize some of these different areas. Let's take a look at some of the other options inside our resource group. For example, access control. Here I can choose who has access to this virtual machine. I can also look and see what my own access looks like. And here you can see I am the owner, so I have access to manage all these types of resources. But if I'd like to, I can go in to grant access and choose that role assignment for another user. So I can choose members as well as the role. And there are a lot of different types of roles that you can add. If you have full access, you have all of these roles. If any resource tags were set up, you can see those here. And you can also go and take a look at any events that might have been happening within this resource group. You would first have to set up the events by choosing which type of events you would like to add in, and then go ahead and select, and then create those events here. For the AZ-900 exam, cost management is very important. So you can take a look at cost analysis, cost alerts, budgets, and other recommendations. So far, my virtual machine has not cost me too much, mostly because I've gone ahead and shut it down when I wasn't using it. If I left it running 24 hours a day, this cost might have been a lot higher. Resources required for an Azure virtual machine are automatically created and deployed, which allow the creator to begin using the virtual machine as soon as the resources are in place. Next, we're going to take a look at network security groups. Network security groups is a type of firewall that will allow us to block or allow certain types of traffic into our virtual machine or any other resource. So I'm going to click on my virtual machine VM1. And within VM1, I'm going to go down to where it says Networking and Network Settings. And it's going to show me the list of IP addresses that are going to be allowed in. At this point, I'm allowing everybody to get in using remote desktop. What I can do is I can click on this network security group, and it's going to expand all of my different rules. And here you can see at the very top, remote desktop, and there's a little warning, which basically is saying that it's not safe to allow this from all different IP addresses. You also see that at the very bottom of each of the inbound and outbound rules, there is a blocking or deny command. If we moved that deny up to the top, it would block everything. That's because it processes all these rules in order. So the first order is to allow remote desktop from any different connection. And then at the very end, to deny. So it doesn't matter there's a deny at the end because of the fact I've already allowed that traffic in. Now let's see how I can block traffic to certain IP addresses. When I click on the RDP rule, you can see the source says any, but let's say that we want to choose specific IP addresses. And here we can put in public or private addresses. I can also change this to be my IP address. What it did was it went out and checked what my IP address was that was connecting to the Azure resource, and it found that it started with this 199 address. So that means that only this IP address would be allowed to access this virtual machine. Now the next area is the source port ranges, and typically you set this to star, meaning all different ports. That's because when you go down to service, that's where it actually is going to lock down which ports are going to be allowed. RDP is going to be TCP port 3389 for that particular service. You could also choose any one of these other common services. Now, in many cases, such as SMTP, it wouldn't make sense to connect to a Windows server that's not running an email service using SMTP. But that's okay because we're going to choose the proper service, in this case, remote desktop, into our server. Also take a look at destination. We can choose IP addresses, service tag, or application security group. So if you have other types of resources or multiple virtual machines, in this case, we can go ahead and put in what those IP addresses are, or their service tag, or we can create an application security group. An application security group is a group of different resources that we can access. Here you can see the protocol. By default, it's going to gray out TCP because that is going to be the port for 3389. The action is going to be allow. I could also choose deny if I wanted to. And then you can go ahead and set a priority for this connection. Here you can see the rules are processed in priority order. The lower the number, the higher the priority. So in this case, my priority 300 means that it is going to be the highest priority because every other rule that is to the left of this is going to have a higher number. And I can also put in a description if I'd like, and then click Save when done. Network security groups are not as granular as an Azure firewall, but it does get the job done for allowing or blocking specific ports and specific IP addresses.